Welcome to Leading with Artivism. Leading with Artivism is a live monthly interview series created and curated by Poet Gold in collaboration with Arts Mid-Hudson, featuring a diverse mix of artivists, artist activists who have taken up the charge through their art to highlight social issues. We invite you to ask questions and get an inside look at the hearts and minds of these courageous creatives.
Welcome, everyone, to Leading with Artivism, another fabulous monthly show that we have today. This gentleman that I'm going to bring up shortly, Vince Ballentine, we met at the O Positive Festival in Kingston. I think it was back in 2019. He was doing a mural called Moving Mountains on the wall of the YMCA. And it's a personal generational story of a man and a woman, and personally connected to his life, his native story. But I've been a fan ever since, and we've chatted through the years every now and then. But it's such an honor having him here today, so we can bring Vince Ballentine up to the front of the room for our conversation today on Leading with Artivism. So I can just simply say thank you for being present. How are you doing today?
I am well and grateful.
Well and grateful. I love that, So we're going to get right to it. We have some artwork of yours, and I want to start the conversation there. So we can bring the artwork up, and you can begin to tell us a little bit about your story, Vince. What has inspired you, particularly with this piece, Universal Wisdom?
So this one, I think, was my most recent commission that was done in Cleveland, Ohio. It was for the channel BET, the station, and they were basically promoting this thing called Black Canvas, where they got a bunch of different artists in different cities around the country to paint murals of Black images and things that are relative to kind of like my concept was where Black dreams flourish. So this is kind of like, if I was to think of a dream, how would I envision that? And this is where that kind of came from.
I like that statement, where Black dreams flourish.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from within you? How did that develop within you? What's part of your background that connects you with that saying in itself?
So it's funny because like it's in Cleveland, but I live in Brooklyn. So when we talk about flourishing, I think about my path and the route that I've had to take to get to where I am now. So I've lived all over the place. I've been a nomad for a good amount of time, but Brooklyn has actually considered me home for a while. And since I've been here, over a decade now, since I've been here, the things that I've been able to do and accomplish and see has just been has been so groundbreaking. Or you know what? Person building. I'll say it like that.
You come up with some phrases that I just absolutely love. Person building. Let's see your next piece. Let's talk about your next piece.
Okay, so this one was actually done for the people of Ingersoll, Ingersoll housing projects in Brooklyn, New York. And the bridge. Okay, so it's called the Peace Bridge, right? You can see that it kind of connects to another side. The irony is that this is a project that has two sides to it, and neither side can get along with each other. So and I mean, when I say can't get along, I mean like they're murdering each other.
Wow.
So these young men are having static with somebody on the other side of the bridge and literally crossing the bridge and shooting at each other. And then they'll cross the back over the bridge and go home. So it was like, we're trying to do something to, it's funny because I feel like art at its most impactful just will hopefully make you think about something. So I imagine if you're, in my mind, you're going across this bridge for whatever intention, you look at this and it will just make you think about something, like this color, this way it's sitting, these stairs. What is this supposed to be? Because it's a three-tiered piece,
Okay.
but it's you can't see the other three walls. If you go to my website, or shameless plug, you can see the rest of it. But so it's a very representational of the people. So the portraits are actually Mr. Carter and Miss Cooper, and
Mhm.
they were like very active in the community. One setting up a basketball program for the youth, and the other one responsible for building the community center that a lot of the people and young adults were going to.
Okay. Let's go to the next piece.
This one is probably one of my favorites, just because it was one of the first pieces of the whole like 2020 situation. You know how like
Mhm.
the world changed,
Right.
and there was protests, and there was COVID, and there was, all of these things going on. During that time, there was a lot of protest art going up, and this wasn't intended to be a protest piece,
Mm-hmm.
but the irony is, I hope this doesn't come across wrong, but because I make Black art, it's
Mm-hmm.
deemed political because it's Black art. So I don't come to it with a political stance. I come through it
Mm-hmm.
with, an aesthetic, technical beauty that I want to
Mm-hmm.
portray.
Mm-hmm.
But so it happens like this. So this one in particular, it was me and two other brothers. I We actually is also collab with Tristan Eaton, who's incredible artist. He's in California now, and he had a space, and he says, "Hey, you guys can go rock this." So that's exactly what we went and did. And the model is the same model that I use for the BET walls,
Okay.
who I just feel like really personifies that like power and strength, and just as well as being beautiful at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to combine all of those things is, and we have some Indinkra symbols on there. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the things that are in this image also tie into the images that the other brothers did.
Okay.
So it kind of all comes together. But ultimately, like I really love her pose, like her pose of pride and ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. That's something I noticed too. The pride in the post, but it wasn't pride from the standpoint of arrogance. And something interesting that you said, because this particular picture just says mural says so much to me. Um, I see hope in the colors. I see dreams in the colors. I see aspirations in the colors. I see beauty in the colors and in her, in the whole in the whole piece. But it was interesting that you said when you do uh, give voice to Black art, that it's deemed political.
Yeah.
Versus there's just as a Black artist doing Black art, whether it's visual poetry, a play, you automatically get pushed into this box because of your expression. It becomes an other as
Yeah.
opposed to art. You
Yeah.
become the social justice poet, or the Black visual artist that speaks to this, versus
Right.
just the artist, and happens to be the art that I'm doing amongst other types of art.
Right. Right. So to be honest, I have I balance it out for
Hmm.
myself,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Because again, I still want to be able to paint beautiful things. So in Kingston in particular, I went up there, and there's a local favorite guy, Uncle Willie, and he's known for going to all the baseball games, and
Hmm.
he is not Black, and I painted a giant Uncle Willie on the side of this building that people can still love and appreciate for being a
Right.
technically sound piece. So
Right.
it's like, you know, I still want to be able to create for the sake of creation.
Right. And that's important, be able to keep that artistic balance for your own
Hmm.
spirit and your own soul, and actually be able to share that out there in the world. Now, you're a multidisciplinary visual artist, and a question came up as to whether it is confusing or freeing to have many art forms to express yourself. What's your take on that?
Definitely freeing, amazingly freeing,
Hmm.
because I can do anything, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, it, I have, let's say it like this. So I went in, I used to live in California, and I went in for a job as a graphic designer. And it's actually funny because actually, I'm sorry, I went in for a job as a screen printer. Right? I was like, I'm
Hmm.
gonna be a screen printer, and they were like, "Well, you can't speak Spanish, right? Because our warehouse was all Spanish speaking based, so people could
Okay.
communicate." And I was like, "Oh, well." There goes that one. And he was like, "But on your resume it says you know how to use Photoshop and Illustrator and
Hmm.
these graphic programs." I do, sure. And so he says, "Well, let me send you over to this department." And so I went in for a job as a screen printer that was making hourly wage. And
Hmm.
I left with a salary position as a graphic designer. So I was like, yeah, we'll do that.
Right. 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 What's the saying? With preparation meets opportunity, you have success. You know, the ability to adapt
Exactly.
becomes so important. What were your early experiences, you know, and influences in your life?
Um, wow. I think as with everyone of a certain age, we didn't have certain things. So,
Hmm.
you know, I came up pre-internet. I came up
Hmm.
I came up house phone, you know, I came up pre-cable. So
Hmm.
access to things wasn't the same. I kind of am also in a way I was a latchkey kid, you know,
Hmm.
so I was figuring things out a lot on my own.
Yeah.
So within the world of entertaining yourself, and my dad is also an artist, so
Okay.
I feel like a little bit of that kind of spilled into me, and a whole lot of that, sorry. Um, and I think just by the necessity of being bored, that I
Mm.
decided to start drawing pictures and things, you know, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. And then it was there was a point where um I would see incredible stuff
Mm.
and it would be discouraging. And because I knew I couldn't do that. I saw what I liked, but
Hmm.
I couldn't do that. So for what
Okay.
it's worth, I was a little discouraged and taken back and didn't really push because I didn't really, I mean, my mother supported what I wanted to do,
Hmm.
but I didn't have other artistic support. Like I didn't have other artists that were incredible telling me things. You know what I mean? It was like
Gotcha.
I always had to figure so much out in my own brain. So when it got to the point of like going to like school for it, and I don't even mean like college. I'm talking about like high school. You know, in high
Hmm.
school you get to actually determine, you know, what kind of path you want to take.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna make this story super short because I know we don't have all the time in the world.
No,
But
go ahead. Go ahead. We're good.
I had two teachers,
Hmm.
um, Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Brown,
Mm.
and you know they were ethnically different, but for the sake of this story, we're not gonna say who was who, right? Or
Gotcha.
what was
Hmm.
what. It's just
Hmm.
about the art right now. So Mr. Brown was my first 3 years, and he was a quiet guy, but he would definitely get his point across. And the when I found out his pedigree, I found out like, oh, wait a minute, this dude has traveled the world doing this. I'm looking at these little landscapes he's doing. And I'm like, oh, okay, those are actually really cool that you're doing that. But
Hmm.
I'm not realizing the outside scope because
Right.
I'm
Right.
also growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. You know, like
Right.
again, very limited. So I'm starting to really connect not only to artwork, but how artwork can be expanded on outside the realm of my personal understanding.
Yes.
He opened me up to say, like, wait a minute, there's more than to what this is than just what I know and have experienced. That was empowering, right? Then I go to Mr. Hoffman. This guy. Let's just say it like this. We're sitting around the classroom one day, and everybody's saying, like, what are they going to do after they leave school? Okay, so they get to me, and I say, well, I'm going to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Like, chest out, right? Like, proud.
Right. Shoulders back.
Yeah, like, couldn't be prouder. And Mr. Hoffman says, how? Excuse me? How?
Yeah.
My answer to him was, well, Mr. Brown wrote me a beautiful recommendation. That's how I got into college, because my first teacher, Mr. Brown, eventually saw the light in me.
Right.
When the teacher that was supposed to be the one that is supposed to, like, ordain you, you know what I mean? The one that's supposed to really push you to the next level was shutting me completely down.
Did not.
So that was my inspiration. And I feel like in a way that's been a driving force since, you know?
So I want you to reimagine little Vince.
Yeah.
Or a young youth out there that wants to explore creating large scale murals or the visual arts. What wisdom would you share with them, or what wisdom would you share with little Vince now? What would you say to that child to inspire them to move forward on their journey?
I would tell myself to stick with it, because it's gonna be terrible until it's not. That's something I struggle with today. So I've done many murals across the country, internationally. You know, I've traveled to do this stuff now. And it doesn't matter. If I do painting for 3 hours, 4 hours, that first hour, it looks awful. It looks horrible. It is not what it's supposed to look like at all. It's not until it turns the corner. It's not until it builds into what it's going to be. Allow the painting to also present itself. Don't always force it to be this thing, because then you're missing out on what it is and how you see, even, because what it turns out is how you actually see. A lot of times we want to see how other people see, and it's like, but you're not them.
Right. Now, and it's funny you would say that, because I know when I write commission pieces, I don't like to start early, and I've had to come to own that. You know, someone may tell me, okay, in 2 months, and I'll have 2 months to write the piece, and it'll be within 48 hours of when they say they need it. But something happens at that moment where the piece it's its own piece. I don't have room, so to speak, to overthink it. All I have room for is to give it birth, so it can be its own piece.
Yeah.
You know,
and you let it go.
And I let it go. as much anxiety that comes with it, and sometimes tears, you know. But it's like, and then I just let it go. How do you feel your work is transformative to a community? Or do you feel it? Do you feel it is, or do you feel it has the potential to be? You know, because you've done just amazing. I mean, you know, I've watched your work since we've met, and I'm in awe of some of the work that you do, most of the work that you do. Do you feel that it's, you know, sort of like has that? That's why you're here on Leading with Artivism, because I find it transformative on the walls of these prospective communities. But how do you feel about that?
I mean, it's so interesting, because, like, when you talk about transformative, I really feel like the only constant is change, right? So, how things are in 2022 compared to 2020, compared to 2018, compared to whatever increment you want to travel back to. It's interesting how these things are relevant, no, are non-existent, are relevant, and then nostalgic, right? So they end up taking this place where now it's like they hold that place, they hold that moment. I did a painting of a friend of mine's daughter, Brian Summers, at Brian Summers. Look up, he's good. His daughter was holding her fist up like this in a picture, and I said, yes, that's it, because I think at the time she was like 3. So I was like, yes, that's what I want to do, and I painted it on this gate in Crown Heights, and the it was based around a community like pop-up center where they would do a lot of just great active work. It was called Public Assistance. They have since had to move thanks to the wonderful landlord and his wonderful rent package. But since then, that painting itself has kind of like started, I don't know, people just gravitate to it because of its relevance to a moment, and how they see and still live in those moments. So it's not that it's necessarily harking back to a time, but it still exists in the current state.
Right.
But everything else around it has changed, except for this, So it's like,
yes,
it's really that dynamic alone is interesting.
So now, how do you find the spaces that, like, for instance, how did you find this place that said, okay, well, paint on this wall or paint on this fence or tell your stories here?
Yeah. So I gotta give a lot of thanks to this organization called Groundswell. Groundswell is in Brooklyn, New York, and when I quit my job and didn't know what I was gonna do, Groundswell is a mural organization, and they hired me, and thanks to Groundswell, I was able to go and basically build my career. But it was working with youth across the city in every aspect. So I was in Rikers Island teaching young adults how to paint murals. So I have murals in Rikers. But yeah, that kind of like was a springboard to the other things. I'm sorry, I lost the question.
No,
I got lost in my thanks to Groundswell.
It's okay, because it's great. The universe is great because it leads me into the next question. But the original question was, how do you find those spaces? So I guess working with Groundswell, gave you exposure to where people would just volunteer spaces for you to, say, hey,
well,
put your art on my
yes.
wall. Or...
Yes and no. They because of the work I was able to do with Groundswell and them as an organization. So there's people that are also, making the things work in the offices. So they might find an outside project and say, hey, you know what, you'd actually be a good fit for this because you do something like that. That kind of allowed me out of that. But with that said, though, that's good for work. Like, so I don't, I'm not starving technically right now for work, but that when I go and find my fun walls, though, my fun walls are when I'm able to express and release and really just get out. I wish there was like a way. I wish there was like a silver bullet to say like, do this and everything's gonna happen. No, the wall with Tristan Eaton that I talked about earlier, that came out because of, he got I don't know how to say ragged or disrespected. What's the word I'm looking for? He basically, someone went over one of his pieces in California. So it was a conversation, And I just kind of jumped in the conversation. And
Gotcha.
he was like, yo, I love what you're doing. Thanks, bro. I got smalls. Let's do it, And,
Yeah.
we kind of clicked like that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, and sometimes, like, what's happening a lot lately is people are calling me to do my work, which I feel like is ultimately, where I want to be.
Yes, yes, indeed. Now, I know that you've done a lot of work. Has there been a particular piece that really moved your soul deeply?
Oh boy.
And I know that's hard because everyone's waiting that's asked you to do work. It's like he's going to say my piece, but is it I know there's work that resonates with us as artists, maybe some more than the other, even though it's all important and it all has meaning to us one way or the other.
Yes. So can I preface with something real fast? I
Yes,
don't
go
have
right
to
ahead.
say the piece. Okay. I had this conversation not too long ago, and I actually posted about it, but the tortured artist, right? And I feel like torture is a part of it because it will never let you be happy. Sometimes you equate happiness to complacency, and it's like, if I feel like I've achieved too much, I feel like that's a bad thing.
Yes.
It's
No,
weird. It's
I hear where you're coming from, because you want to stay fresh in your art. Someone had asked me a question in an interview. Oh, I think it was for the premiere, Say Their Names, and they said, "How do you stay relevant?" And that falls into not becoming complacent, and
exactly.
and for me, it's always being present.
Yes. Yes.
Being present.
Exactly. So it's and being present, I will say, is grateful. That's gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Gratitude, I feel like, is a great way to show you're in the present moment. So with that said, how about this? I'll say that my favorite piece right now isn't a visually sound technical piece, right? Because
Okay.
my favorite piece that would be visually sound was probably the Summer of Soul piece that I did in Harlem for the film that came out, because technically it was all over the place and I was able to pull that thing off in like 4 or 5 days. So that was that. But the piece that meant the most, we were doing a project for a fund, and it was in a studio space in Bushwick.
Okay.
And I genuinely had a moment in that space where I was grateful for what I had been able to accomplish. So while I'm painting these boards, it's 8 feet by like 20 feet in the studio space, big wall, but it's like, at this point, I think it was like 10 o'clock at night, and we were on the second floor, and I could look out the back window, and it's not much of a view, right?
Okay.
But I look out and see Bushwick, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, I am a kid from Cleveland, Ohio, who has traveled the entire world and is now working out of a studio space in Bushwick, Brooklyn, New York right now.
Yes.
I genuinely got emotionally stirred up to where I was like, I need to take a break now and just go outside and breathe, And for 5, 10, I don't even know how long I was out there for. I just lived that moment.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel that. I feel that. I want to circle back to the youth, because I know that you are a fellow teaching artist, like myself. And how important is it? Do you feel it is to keep our youth engaged in the arts?
I think it's extremely important because kind of had an argument before where I was upset that they were eliminating arts programs like art music programs, because they foster independence. With a math class, I feel like you are learning formulas and strategies. With science, I feel like you are, learning how two things kind of come together, right? Social studies, I feel like in a way you're regurgitating information, right? It's there's certain aspects that are like, cut and dry, and that might be perfect in the world of like, you just go get a job and that's the rest of your life, cool. But the wonderful thing about the arts is that it gives you that one spot to be you. How you play that instrument, how you create what you're doing is completely up to you, And ironically, you're now incorporating all those other elements. You're incorporating the social studies, you're incorporating the sciences, you're incorporating the mathematics into this creative process. But it's not really seen as such. You know what I mean? It has to be seen in a term of, can you check a box? And it's like, these are intangible things though, So yeah, that's why.
Yeah, but and just to take it one step further, I also think it fosters critical thinking.
Yes.
And how you impact the world, and how the art impacts you as well. And like you said, all those classes are connected to art. Music is math. I always tell students, music is math. Let's learn how to do these quatrains. What's 4 quatrains? 4 times 4 is what? How much is that? I'm teaching them math.
Right.
Well, I'm teaching them how to create poetry and some ELA, and so it's all interconnected. There is a push for arts education integration now in America, and I know it'll be some time, but there is a serious conversation about it, a serious push, because not everyone learns the same way.
Right. Yes, definitely. I that was actually one thing I learned in college was I took some education under what is it called? Major, minor? I guess my minor was in art education. And sadly enough, I didn't follow through with it. But some of the things you learn is that true indeed, we all learn differently. Like I think there was 3 things in particular. Like one person you can just tell them and they get it. Somebody else, you got to tell them and they need to read what you said, right? So they need to double down on it. And then the third person, you can tell them, they can read it, and then they have to somehow, apply that, right? It has to be applicable in order for them to understand it. So that's one part of it, right? But then in reality, well, in practice, right, I can say that when I've worked with a 15-year-old, no, we would scratch that. We'll say an 18-year-old, right? When I've worked with an 18-year-old, 18 is 18, right? It was the irony of one summer was that one summer I worked with the NCAA Final Four in San Antonio, Texas. And same summer I worked with I forgot what it's called, RNDC on Rikers Island, right?
Okay.
So same age group, same exact age, these kids are 18. These kids are in college shooting basketball trying to make a professional career. These kids are in jail. The similarities were uncanny. They were the same kid. It's just that this kid made a mistake and he got caught for it. And now he's serving a sentence. But you have to treat them, you have to treat kind of everybody not the same, but give them the same leeway. Give them the same, space. So you can't crowd these kids, you know what I mean? And then allow these kids to be whatever. They're still the same, they still have the same wants and needs out of life, They're still nervous, they're still scared.
Right. And they want to learn. I often say meet them where they are. So often because of the construct, we have the construct and you're trying to meet the needs of the construct versus the true needs of the child.
That's a fact.
Meet them where they are, and they will tell you how to teach them so they can learn.
That, oh my gosh, that's a fact. I mean, but it's so funny because that's what we want too.
Right.
I think that's what everybody just wants, but yet we tend not to live by the golden rule, you know? We tend not to. We want to be asked questions, but then at the same time, you know, start taking this dictator, you know, like stance on things, like it's gonna be my way, and it's like, but you wait, no. If you want it, reciprocate. You know, that's the whole reality of this thing.
You know, unfortunately, the educational system is, you know, the intent is good, but the times have changed, and there's a lot of pressure on our teachers, you know, to meet these standards,
Mm-hmm.
to meet these standards that our students are getting lost in. So
Very much so.
You know, and
I mean,
and their hands are tied. Sometimes I feel so bad because their hands are tied because they just have to meet these standards.
Yeah, teaching for testing is never going to work.
Right. No,
Yeah, it leaves too many kids out. And the funny thing is, it's supposed to be no child left behind.
That could be a whole nother show. So that could be a whole nother show. You know, you as I mentioned before, you've done so much work. Is there a face that you feel passionately about, or someone's story that you feel passionately about that you want to tell, that I just need to tell this person's story, put this person on a wall?
Wow. There is, but let me think, because there's one obvious one, and he's an incredible human being. But I'm trying to think if there's another obscure one in the list that I can think of. I'm gonna go with Patrick. So Patrick Dougher, Dougher. He's gonna be really mad at me. He's the one that found me, right? So I'm painting a picture on the side of the road on Broadway in Brooklyn, and I have no job, and I don't know what I'm gonna do in my life. I just know I'm gonna paint. I'm gonna paint. So this brother comes along, and you know, I'm painting, and he's kind of watching, and he steps up, and he's like, you know, hey, you painted that? And I'm like, nah, I did. I'm just standing here holding paint, right? So I was a jerk, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
By that time, you know, I'm New York, so it was just like, all right, you know, of course I'm gonna be a wise ass. So, but you know, he cuts through it, and he says, you know, I work for this organization, Groundswell, right? So that's how I ended up coming to Groundswell. Was, you know, thankfully he walked by one day. But then, like, you know, as the story progresses, I saw not only what he did for me, I saw what he was doing for a lot of people.
Wow.
It was really like, you can see a construction person building a building, a structure of sorts, right? But you don't see a person being built, right? Again, like going back to people builders, you know, like it's not as obvious. I mean, maybe if you're physically working out, you know, you'll see differences, but in a psychological way, it's hard to see those changes.
Right.
And so to see someone that kind of doesn't know anything but head first into situations, and is completely open-hearted and forthright, is a rarity in reality. You know, like it's something that I even look up to say, like, I want to be, you know, more like this person.
Right.
At least the attributes, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah, no, I get you. You know, and to be in a place in your journey where, whether you recognize it or not, the universe did. This is just what I believe, you know, you know, that we receive what we need when we're ready to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Exactly.
so
Exactly. You can be too early.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But
I
you were
went
at
to
that,
groundswell when I first moved to New York, and they told me no.
right, because you weren't
I
ready to
wasn't ready.
receive that. But
Exactly.
it came
Exactly.
back around. It came back around.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know.
So with all that said, just real quick. So I did the painting of him and of Patrick Doerr at Wall Therapy. It's
Mhm.
called uh something else. I forgot the title of it. But you'll
Okay.
see like it's a bunch of things that have been built throughout the years that are monuments, and then you see him with a plank of wood preparing to, you know, keep building.
Well, Patrick, I hope to meet you one day.
Aha.
For bringing this gentleman to all of us through you. So with that
Yes.
said, Vince, I just want to thank you for being here, and I want to allow you to do what we call a shameless plug. Is there some upcoming project or something that you just want to plug?
Okay. So first off, this is extremely shameless because like it has so my daughter makes cookies and they're banging. So she started brilliantly. She started with lactation cookies. So she was making cookies for pregnant mothers to help
Mm,
produce milk. And I was like, girl, you smart. You you
wow.
keep that up,
Wow.
right?
How old is your daughter?
Yes. She's 22. That
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
but so the name of the company is Mama Leche. Hold on. Shameless plug time, plug.
Mama Leche.
Yeah, Mama Leche. Boom. Look at this. She got the merchandise.
Okay. Okay. She's not
I
playing.
can't
She
get
got
it
the
right.
merch.
Yeah, right. So boom, Mama Leche, check her out, right?
Okay.
And then but she is also in Bermuda, so you're gonna have to get it shipped. It's
Okay.
not in the store just yet. We're working on that.
Right.
Um I want to can I give thanks to people instead of
Absolutely.
like shout outs?
Absolutely. Please. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, this is my favorite part. I really want to thank everyone that has like that I've been able to work with
Hmm.
and has kind of helped me to become more, right? Um, for instance, I want to thank New Jersey Mural Arts program for bringing me out and just kind of putting me in a position where, you know, I can experience something in a different light with with content that I wasn't familiar with, but to wrap my head around it and grow from there.
Hmm.
Um, there's this organization, ICU Art, out in California. Even though, you know, you hate to hear these things, you know, like in the middle of your painting, it's like, so you finished with that part over there? But ultimately, it makes you better. So it's
Right.
like
Right. Absolutely.
growth
Absolutely.
is growth is anything but easy, and it's
Hmm.
anything but painless, you know.
Right.
So okay, fine. I really want to thank you for showing up that day. I still remember the day. I actually looked at the piece now, and it's 2017. Imagine
Wow.
that,
Was it
right?
2017? Oh
It was
man.
2017,
5 years ago. Wow.
actually, that I want to thank them too. I want to thank O Positive
Hmm.
for like they were actually my first festival. So I did the wall in Queens for Tribe Called Quest, and then
Okay.
a friend of mine, Dave Lowry, hits me up and says, "Hey, you should do a positive." I was like, "What's that?" And then it was shameless,
Hmm.
shameless. So,
Yes. There you go.
so, so he was like, "Yo, you should do O Positive." I was like, "All right, word, let's do it." And so I was out there and I had this ladder, and they
Yes.
were like, "No, not good enough." And then I was on the lift, and there you were,
Yes. Yes.
real short version.
There I was, and there you were. And so fantastic. So, Vince, thank you. I'm going to order some cookies.
Cookies.
Okay, we'll hook up offline so I can get me some cookies. And
Okay.
thank you for being here on Leading with Artivism. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, audience, for tuning in once again. Next month in March, I believe we have Viviana Juan Matais for Women's Month. I believe that's the case. And but thanks everyone for being here. Enjoy the show. You can always go back and watch this again on YouTube. Peace, Vince. Peace, man. Keep doing what you do.
Peace. These cameras are funny.